Hello, my name is Elder Price, and I would like to share with you the most amazing book. Hello, my name is Elder Grant. It's a book about America a long, long time ago. It has so many awesome parts, you simply won't believe how much this book can change your life. Hello, my name is Elder Green. I would like to share with you this book of Jesus Christ. Hello, my name is Elder Young. Did you know that Jesus lived here in the USA? You can read all about it now. In this nifty book, it's free, no, you don't have to pay. Hello, my name is Elder Smith, and can I leave this book with you for you to know?
Hello, my name is Doug Bundy, formerly Elder Bundy, but I now am your host for Voices from the Dust TV this Wednesday, the 4th day of December 2014. We welcome you to our show where we share the reason for the hope within us, the reason why the Latter-day Saints are Christians, and also the reason why you should be too. Our message not only explains what distinguishes LDS Christian doctrine from non-LDS Christian doctrine, but also why the only salvation remaining for the Gentiles is for them to repent and to be baptized, and thus to be identified in the same covenant and to worship at the same altar as Israel. And we've talked about it for a year and a half almost now, and most of those, if not all, they are all actually, past episodes are on our website at voicesfromthedust.org. That's voicesfromthedust.org. Go there, click on TV in the menu items there, and you can watch us live or catch our past programs that are archived below the player there, the live player. We can not show you. Unbelievable, doesn't come up. But I was going to show you the actual page. I don't know what's actually happening. We did have trouble with it yesterday, and I thought we got it fixed, but it doesn't seem to want to come up that fast. It's up now, but there is something slow about it. Anyway, you click here on this item TV, and it will bring up that page with our player and so on it. Well, today we have a really important program lined up for you to be talking about. It's titled The Lands of Zion, Staring the Corruption of America in the Face is Breathtaking. And it is true. It's just unbelievable. And we'll get into it after we go to our Whispers Out of the Ground, which is where we are going through the Book of Mormon chapter by chapter. And we are now in chapter 7 of the Book of Helaman. And Whispers Out of the Ground refers to the fulfillment of chapter 29 of Isaiah, which we've talked about quite a bit. But let's go to that now so that we can see the text here. Let's see if I've got it. I'll pull it up and then we'll listen to the audio, and we can read and listen at the same time. So here is the text, and I will go ahead and start the audio.
Behold, now it came to pass in the 69th year of the reign of the judges over the people of the Nephites, that Nephi, the son of Helaman, returned to the land of Zarahemla from the land northward. For he had been forth among the people who were in the land northward, and did preach the word of God unto them, and did prophesy many things unto them. And they did reject all his words, insomuch that he could not stay among them, but returned again unto the land of his nativity. And seeing the people in a state of such awful wickedness, and those Gadianton robbers filling the judgment seats, having usurped the power and authority of the land, laying aside the commandments of God, and not in the least aright before him, doing no justice unto the children of men, condemning the righteous because of their righteousness, letting the guilty and the wicked go unpunished because of their money, and moreover to be held in office at the head of government, to rule and do according to their wills, that they might get gain and glory of the world, and moreover that they might the more easily commit adultery, and steal, and kill, and do according to their own wills. Now this great iniquity had come upon the Nephites in the space of not many years. And when Nephi saw it, his heart was swollen with sorrow within his breast, and he did exclaim in the agony of his soul, Oh, that I could have had my days in the days when my father Nephi first came out of the land of Jerusalem, that I could have joyed with him in the promised land. Then were his people easy to be entreated, firm to keep the commandments of God, and slow to be led to do iniquity. And they were quick to hearken unto the words of the Lord. Yea, if my days could have been in those days, then would my soul have had joy in the righteousness of my brethren. But behold, I am consigned that these are my days, and that my soul shall be filled with sorrow because of this, the wickedness of my brethren. And behold, now it came to pass that it was upon a tower which was in the garden of Nephi, which was by the highway which led to the chief market, which was in the city of Zarahemla. Therefore Nephi had bowed himself upon the tower which was in his garden, which tower was also near unto the garden gate, by which led the highway. And it came to pass that there were certain men passing by, and saw Nephi as he was pouring out his soul unto God upon the tower. And they ran and told the people what they had seen. And the people came together in multitudes, that they might know the cause of so great mourning for the wickedness of the people. And now when Nephi arose, he beheld the multitudes of people who had gathered together. And it came to pass that he opened his mouth and said unto them, Behold, why have ye gathered yourselves together, that I may tell you of your iniquities? Yea, because I have got upon my tower, that I might pour out my soul unto my God, because of the exceeding sorrow of my heart, which is because of your iniquities. And because of my mourning and lamentation, ye have gathered yourselves together, and do marvel, yea, and ye have great need to marvel. Yea, ye ought to marvel, because ye are given away, that the devil has got so great hold upon your hearts. Yea, how could you have given way to the enticing of him who is seeking to hurl away your souls down to everlasting misery and endless woe? Oh, repent ye, repent ye. Why will ye die? Turn ye unto the Lord your God. Why has he forsaken you? It is because you have hardened your hearts. Yea, ye will not hearken unto the voice of the good shepherd. Yea, ye have provoked him to anger against you. And behold, instead of gathering you, except ye will repent, behold, he shall scatter you forth, that ye shall become meat for dogs and wild beasts. Oh, how could you have forgotten your God in the very day that he has delivered you? But behold, it is to get gain, to be praised of men. Yea, and that ye might get gold and silver, and ye have set your hearts upon the riches and the vain things of this world, for the which ye do murder and plunder and steal, and bear false witness against your neighbor, and do all manner of iniquity. And for this cause woe shall come unto you, except ye shall repent. For if ye will not repent, behold, this great city, and also all those great cities which are round about, which are in the land of our possession, shall be taken away, that ye shall have no place in them. For behold, the Lord will not grant unto you strength, as he has hitherto done, to withstand against your enemies. For behold, thus saith the Lord, I will not show unto the wicked of my strength, to one more than the other, save it be unto those who repent of their sins and hearken unto my words. Now therefore I would that ye should behold, my brethren, that it shall be better for the Lamanites than for you, except ye shall repent. For behold, they are more righteous than you, for they have not sinned against that great knowledge which ye have received. Therefore the Lord will be merciful unto them. Yea, he will lengthen out their days and increase their seed, even when thou shalt be utterly destroyed, except thou shalt repent. Yea, woe be unto you because of that great abomination which has come among you. And ye have united yourselves unto it, yea, to that secret band which was established by Gadianton. Yea, woe shall come unto you because of that pride which ye have suffered to enter your hearts, which has lifted you up beyond that which is good because of your exceedingly great riches. Yea, woe be unto you because of your wickedness and abominations. And except ye repent, ye shall perish. Yea, even your land shall be taken from you, and ye shall be destroyed from off the face of the earth. Behold now, I do not say that these things shall be of myself, because it is not of myself that I know these things. But behold, I know that these things are true, because the Lord God has made them known unto me. Therefore I testify that they shall be.
Wow. See, again, it just applies so much to what we're talking about here. And the awful situation that we are in, you know, you can see how this message is made for our day, because that's exactly what we would say to these people we're going to be talking about today, and to the whole nation, the leaders that will not condemn the wicked, but allow the righteous to get away. I mean, condemn the righteous, but while allowing the wicked to get away. And the pronouncement that unless we repent, we'll be destroyed, and the cities be cut off, which the Lord said would happen. And he would not strengthen the Gentiles, the wicked Gentiles, against the other wicked Gentiles. In other words, the communists, probably, as we think of the rednecks versus the communists, perhaps. He's not going to be involved in that at all, and they'll destroy one another, as we have seen. This is incredibly important for us to understand in our day, in view of the things that have happened and are happening now. So we will go on then to our next feature, which is the update. Here was the TV didn't come up, but this is our page for the television show, or our Voices from the Dust show. You can watch it live there or record it after it's finished, and there are links to Facebook and Google Plus and the YouTube channel where they are, and then you can also get the past episodes here below that. But now we're going to click on our awful situation update. Again, it'll take a little while to come up. That's because of this window, hangout window that's open. It slows everything down. But while that's doing that, then I want to go and talk a little bit about this clip that's coming up. Well, there it is. Okay, there's our awful situation. So just go to our page, click on situation update, and you can see where the Lord commands us to awaken to a sense of our awful situation for the very same reasons we just saw Nephi explaining in the book of Helaman there on his tower, crying out because he sees the wickedness that is going on among the people. And this here is a slideshow where you can see the things, current events that are going on. You can also go to a link here that will take you to another slideshow that features full-length videos for background purposes. But what we're going to do is play a video here now from Red Pill Here I was talking about that, and you couldn't see it. I forgot to share it. But at any rate, it's there. So just go to voicesfromthedesk.org and click on our awful situation update. Now, in this clip that I'm going to play, the Red Pill Reports, it's called. It's out of Missouri, I think. It features news at home and abroad, and but it also prefaces the show that they're going to have, or they have had, on this breathtaking American corruption that's being exposed by Greg Morse. And so we'll play that and listen to a little bit of the update on our awful situation. And when it gets to that preface, we'll have more to say about it. But we certainly need to correlate.
I need to preface today's show.
We want to correlate this what he calls this preface to the experience of Nephi that he just had, that we saw in the Book of Mormon. So let me bring this out, and we'll play this preface then to the Greg Morris project of Save Our Family and Our Home, where he is exposing the mortgage crisis and the fraud that's involved in that. And now it's even worse, as we will see. Let's listen.
So, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit here, because I need to preface today's show, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit here, because we have been striving continuously to raise the bar every time we do a show. Every time we have a guest, we try and bring in a bit better guest than we've had before, and we try and keep the quality of our guests to be super duper high. And I feel like we've been doing that really, really well. But today, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be another high water mark. And I know I've probably said that every day for like the last week and a half. But today, we're going to have Greg Morse on the show. Now, a lot of you probably are following V the Guerrilla Economist and also Michael Rosecliffe's work. Greg was on V's show on Friday with the beginning of his exposure of what I can really only classify as probably the most important story that has ever been broken in the United States of America. And I don't say that to be, sensationalist or to try and exaggerate. But honestly, the work that Greg and his research team have done, and the dots that these guys have connected with the documents that they have, with the information that they have, honestly is going to make Iran-Contra affair look like a day trip to Disney World at this point. So Greg is going to come on the show to essentially re-clarify the things that he talked about on Friday with V, and then to dive more deeply into the issue today. I have to say also that our own staff reporters are working closely with Greg as we try and flush the details of this story out. And one of those articles is up today at redpillreports.com, written by our good in-house staff reporter Robert Smith. Just did an absolutely fantastic work of bringing all this together so that you guys can understand what it is that we're talking about. But essentially, I'll just lay it out for you guys. Greg and his research team have traced all of the money, the layers of criminality that exist in this specific topic are like nothing I've ever seen before. But they have traced the money from the mortgage fraud, all the bailout money. They've been able to show that it has gone to non-governmental agencies. They've used that money to foster terrorism. They've used that money to topple governments, to put in juntas. We're talking about the most criminal of the criminals at this point, guys. This is going to be, as I said, probably the largest story ever broken on the internet, and probably will touch more of you out there personally. Those of you who think you own your own homes, I want you guys to stay tuned at the 11 o'clock hour. I want you to get your friends involved. This is a huge, huge story. And the other side of the coin in this particular situation is that we have a plan. Greg, his research team, they have a plan, you guys. We have the ability to take this information and transfer it directly into action, which is not something that you're ever going to get in any other situation. I mean, there are situations out there, I guess, where you could say, okay, this could be a path that we could take, or that could be a path. The path is laid out. Greg is essentially already won. The work has been done. Now it's about building an army of people who are going to stand up and say, enough. We've seen the lies, we've seen the criminality, and we're tired of it because we are the ones who are being fleeced as a result of it. And I cannot thank Greg and his team enough for doing the work and putting himself out there. I mean, this is a dangerous, dangerous subject matter, ladies and gentlemen. This is not just something you're going to talk about over brunch and never think about again. This is decision time. We are at a position right now where you need to decide between complacency and comfort and actually making a decision to protect your children and to protect your grandchildren. So again, we are very fortunate here at Red Pill Reports to be teamed up and working closely with Greg Morse. Cannot tell you guys enough how important this conversation we're going to have at 11 o'clock is. And I'll dig into Robert's article a little bit more during the economic news as a little bit more of a preface towards getting all of us on the same page with Greg when he shows up at 11. So again, it's going to be the biggest story ever on the internet, hands down, no questions asked. We also have a plan to make the changes that we need to have take place to put these criminals in their place once and for all. Again, cannot tell you guys enough how important this is and how just absolutely privileged those of us here at Red Pill are, in terms of working with Greg. It's just some of the best information that we've ever come across, and one of the most stand-up guys we've ever come across either. So very, very happy to be talking about that in the 11 o'clock hour. Do stay tuned for that. Let's move into some national news right now, because as I mentioned earlier, we're all on this crazy rock traveling around the sun together, and for some strange reason, we haven't gotten our act together over the weekend. You always think maybe Saturday everybody will take a day off, weekend off. No, horrible things happening over the weekend. If you buy into the terrorist threat kind of motif, then this, I guess, could be considered good news. I don't buy into that, so for me, it's just news. But the Islamic State executioner, known as Jihadi John, is said to have been wounded by a U.S.-led airstrike on the Iraqi-Syrian border, according to a report. This report is coming out of the New York Times. And the masked terrorist, obviously talking about Jihadi John, suspected of carrying out the beheadings of Western prisoners, including American journalists James Foley and Stephen Sotloff, neither of which I believe, but you can take that as my own editorial. He was apparently injured in a bombing raid on November 8th, according to the Mail Online. So let's see. An unnamed nurse apparently was cited saying Jihadi John was amongst several of the Islamic State leaders wounded in the airstrike in the western town of Al-Qam. The cold-blooded killer was among a group of high-level ISIS leaders meeting at an underground bunker targeted by the U.S. and Iraqi bomber jets. Jihadi John, who spoke with a British accent in the ISIS-related snuff videos, was said to have narrowly escaped with his life, and he and others were treated at the Al-Qam General Hospital and then driven to Syria, according to this nurse and according to the report from the Mail. So is that guy still out beheading people? Probably. Is he a CIA operative? Yeah, I think so, or Mossad or something like that. But he narrowly escaped death, unfortunately. So there you go with that. And in a related story, there has been a new video released of a beheading. And apparently the gentleman who was beheaded in this video is Mr. Peter Kassig. Now, Peter Kassig, this is an unusual situation to me. He's 26 years old. He was ex-Army. He apparently converted to Islam. He changed his name to Abdul Rahman. And he, let's see. So apparently his conversion and the fact that he was there helping refugees when he was captured last year didn't really do anything to save him. And then as a side note, the video that they put out is exceptionally graphic. They have got the message that no one was believing the fake ones. And so they did either the best CGI and makeup work that I've ever seen. Again, I'll let you guys know that I'm not somebody who wants to watch stuff like this. I try and stay very sensitized to violence so that when I see a police officer beating my friend, I recognize that that's the option, the opportunity for me to get involved. So I think if you're dumbing yourself down in terms of being sensitized to violence, you're going to forget in those positions where you need to actually be doing something to help people around you. You'll just sit there and, snap pictures with your phone. So I don't watch stuff like Hostel or Saw or any of those kind of movies. But I did obviously watch part of this video because there was so much rumor about the fact that it looked real. And from the portions of it that I saw, I do have to admit that it does look real in this situation. Now, does that mean that ISIS is not being run by the CIA? Probably couldn't make that claim just based on the video. I also wonder about Peter Kasich here, being 26, ex-army, and somebody who's now converted to Islam, or at least putting forth the idea that he is converted to Islam, and the fact that they still captured and killed him anyway leads me to believe, looking at this guy, I'm thinking CIA. He looks like a CIA guy, I'm just saying. So take that, put that in your crock pot, and fire it up, ladies and gentlemen, because that's what's going on there. A report from the Times of India is talking about ISIS, also saying that we probably have underestimated the size of the Islamic State, which is obviously a Sunni radical organization, which may have raised an army of 2 million fighters, according to a Kurdish leader. That number, 2 million, is 7 or 8 times more than Western intelligence estimates, which have been putting the number somewhere around 31,000 fighters. And of course, this is the chief of staff for the Kurdish president talking here. And Hussein also speculates that the CIA and U.S. intelligence agencies may have only been speaking about the core fighters in estimating the jihadist numbers. And he says that the ability of the IS to attack on many widely separated fronts in Iraq and Syria at this time is pretty much great evidence to suggest that its numbers have swollen well beyond the initial reports from the CIA and the U.S. intelligence. He also estimates that IS rules a third of each of Iraq and Syria, and each of them have a population of 10 to 12 million people, which is about the same size as Britain, which is, he says this gives jihadists a large pool of potential recruits. And he's talking about hundreds of thousands of fighters because they were able to mobilize young Arab men in the territory that they've already successfully taken. And this huge number of the IS underlies how difficult it's going to be to eliminate it, even with U.S.-led airstrikes. So there's still a lot going on in the Middle East in terms of ISIS right now. And then even in more ISIS-related news, confirmation now that Egypt's deadliest terrorist group, which had pledged allegiance to, which has now pledged allegiance to the Islamic State jihadists, branded the regime of Egyptian's president Abdel Fattah as Zionist collaborators. So now, not only have we funded this militant group in Egypt, that militant group now has decided that the standing military in Egypt are all essentially Zionist collaborators, and they are now going to be working to remove the government from Egypt, and are now wholly and completely in line with ISIS. So that's great. We've given them, tons and tons of money and weapons, and now they're working against us. Par for the course, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, that we'll end that there. We don't have that much time today. I want to go ahead and get into our discussion, which will be related to this. It'll be other portions of the Red Pill report that we will play for you here, but we want to emphasize that as we study the message of the voices from the dust regarding the awful state that the ancients found themselves in, that we've been reading in the book of Helaman, because of the wicked and secret combinations to rob, plunder, and murder their people with impunity, we see the same thing among the people of our modern Gentile nation, only on a breathtakingly larger scale, where we have hundreds of millions of people in this nation. Things are, the same in a sense, but it's since the scale is so much larger and we cover the whole breadth of the land and the world, as a matter of fact, then it's naturally different. So you have to be able to scale up what was happening among the Nephites and Lamanites, and then you can see what we're trying to do. So on today's show, we try to understand our own awful state here in the land of Zion, as virtually all American mortgage holders are being plundered by the international banksters, and they don't even know it. Greg Morse has uncovered the nationwide corruption of the most fundamental of American financial institutions and government institutions, and found that the government institutions that are supposed to be overlooking and be the watchdog of the financial institutions, which is a joke. But he's found that it engulfs the American people in the biggest case of fraud and pillage the world has ever known. Furthermore, the gigantic streams of revenue that it is generating have been employed, according to the voices from the dust, as it would be, to overthrow the freedom of all lands, nations, and countries, and to bring to pass the destruction of all people, for it's built up by the devil, who is the father of all lies, even that same liar who has beguiled our first parents, yea, even that same liar who has caused man to commit murder from the beginning, who has hardened the hearts of men that they have murdered the prophets and stoned them and cast them out from the beginning. The fact that the U.S. government is a captured operation, just as the government of the ancient Americans was back there in those days, is not news to anyone who is awake. But the knowledge that it is funding terrorism through American mortgage fraud is really big news. We will begin today then with more of this red pill report where they are interviewing Greg Morse. Now, remember, we've talked about Mr. Morse's work in the past episodes of Voices from the Dust TV, when he appeared on the Hagman and Hagman report, and also on the John Wells program, Caravan to Midnight. So you can go back and look at, I don't remember what they were called back then, but in that April-May time frame when that was going on, you can find our reports on that and our discussions of it. Back then, the mission of Mr. Morse was to enlist the American people in an effort to thwart Judge Martin Glenn's New York bankruptcy court's effort to turn over 70 million mortgage properties to private companies. I think there were 2 private companies for pennies on the dollar. And I'm not sure how that actually turned out. He was supposed to make his ruling in August. I don't know what's happened. I haven't had a chance to research it enough to find out. But the fact is now it's even worse. So we're going to listen to this next portion of the Red Pill report to see.
I would like to jump into an article written by our very own Robert Smith, who is one of the best reporters that I've run across in my life, and cannot tell you how excited we are to have people like Robert joining our staff and going through some of the really arduous investigation details that Greg Morse has come up with, and try to put it all into something digestible for everyone. But I want to bring everyone's attention to this issue right now, because we are, as I mentioned earlier, going to be joined by Greg Morse in about 13 minutes. And this report right now is called "Did Banks Gamble Your Home and Distort Chain of Title?" It is up right now at redpillreports.com. I won't go through the whole thing, but as a preface to the economic discussion that we're getting ready to have with Greg, I do want to get into this. During the banker bailout of 2008, the financial centers of power came under examination. The deceptive and illegal practice of mortgage securitization was brought to light and showed the banking industry's willingness to distort chain of title involving property ownership, and showed that they would gamble with America's most cherished possessions, which is obviously their homes. Groundbreaking evidence has now appeared, which begs the question of just how deep this rabbit hole goes, and quite frankly, might make the Watergate scandal look trivial. And that is not an understatement, ladies and gentlemen. And obviously, this is, again, a bigger story than the internet, bigger story than the medium we are using to carry it. Through a secret shell game played with the proceeds derived from mortgage manipulation, underground black funds seem to have been created and used to fund terrorism throughout the world. To the point, the very extremists killing our soldiers and beheading Americans overseas might have been funded by money funneled from the MERS-created mortgage securities sold on Wall Street by some of the largest banks in the world. Greg Morse and Scott Bennett have followed the breadcrumbs and now are asking for your attention, which is why we are so privileged to be teaming up with Greg and bringing him on the show this afternoon to go over all of this with you guys. It doesn't take a whole lot of research to create a scenario in your mind where all of these events are possible. Banks laundering money for criminal elements are hardly something new. More often than they care to admit, the banking industry has been caught laundering large sums of drug money, and HSBC has even paid $1 billion fine because of it. Traditionally and by law, banks who loan money to home buyers are required to track all transactions involved in an interest in the home through the county recorder. This process ensures proper accounting and allows everyone to have confidence in the property ownership records of the county. Because of the freedom to act without oversight of the publicly elected county recorder, MERS, the Mortgage Electronic Registration System, allows the banks to separate the note from the property itself. Instead of being registered with the public record, they are now recorded by the banks themselves, which is the proverbial fox guarding the hen house. They were then able to turn these notes into financial instruments traded and leveraged on the stock market beyond the ability of the average homeowner to even envision. By derivatives and insurance securitization, a $100,000 home mortgage could be worth well over $1 million. Furthermore, anytime a homeowner defaulted on payments, complicated insurance plans were activated and allowed the banks to come to cash in. Every mortgage was paid, whether the homeowner made a payment or not. It was brilliant. Why do you think these banks gave everybody with a pulse a loan in the early 2000s? They made money either way, up or down, foreclose or no foreclosure. Banks won at the Americans' expense. The mortgage notes were just a piece of paper to be toyed with, and it didn't matter who got hurt by this practice or its questionable legality. The large sums of money guaranteed by these complicated schemes created huge pools, plenty of hush money to go around, and to keep the wheels greased and the carousel spinning. There is no question that proper accounting would make us look at the foreclosure crisis in an entirely new light. Why have these homeowners been ripped out of their homes when banks have suffered no financial loss? And where did all the money that the banks made cheating America actually go? The work of Greg Morse and Scott Bennett seem to show a significant portion of this money was used to fund off-the-record activities, some of them being used to spread unrest through violence and to topple governments, laundering drug money, wrecking chains of titles, defrauding investors and homeowners alike. It has all been proven in court many, many times over, and there is a good chance that the bank you deposit your paycheck and got your home loan from have already paid billions in fines to settle these types of suits. Bank funding, the very foreign gangs our soldiers have died for, is sickening. And although Greg and Scott's work is the most complete and provable case proving the link between terrorism, the banks, and your mortgage, it is not the first. And this article goes on to outline several situations where veterans have already been successful in fighting these things. But you have to understand that these successes are also being kept under the radar, and that if this story grows legs and we get this out in front of the American people, we have an opportunity right now to put these people down. We have an opportunity right now to actually bring these people to justice and to fix the most important issue that is wrong with our country, which is obviously the fractional reserve lending system, the Federal Reserve, the intricacy that is connecting all of these criminal organizations to one another. We have the ability to shine the brightest light ever in the history of the universe right on these people and watch them scurry like cockroaches. And, Greg makes a great point when he says that these guys have basically already lost. They have a choice right now as to whether or not they want to lose their careers or lose their careers and be embarrassed about it. Because really, the option is up to us. And one of the things that Greg and Scott have done has been to create probably one of the most aggressively worded petitions I've ever read in my entire life. Most of the time when you read a petition, it's a request. It's saying, hey, we'd love it if you if you had the time, if you could, maybe address this issue. This petition, ladies and gentlemen, is not like that. This is, you put your name on this, you're biting into a big sandwich here, guys, because the language is direct, and we are not making requests at this point. We are absolutely demanding that these people who are in charge, supposedly, we're demanding that they do their jobs. That's it. That's what it comes down to. They have a job to do, and Greg and Scott have done such a good job of laying out the foundation, which shows very clearly that these people have not done their jobs, and shows very clearly also where these people have failed in doing what it is that they're supposed to do. And so we have the plan. The plan is on the table. We're going to be directing you guys to a website in the next hour so you guys can go and read this petition. We are looking for 100,000 people minimum to sign and send this petition. We can absolutely shut this system down if enough people are willing to pull their boots up and get busy. And that's what it's going to take, and that's why we have decided to team up with Greg, because again, this is information that you're not going to get anyplace else. This is one of the only places on the internet where Greg is even willing to come and talk about these things. Again, we're talking about taking on the entire global corporate criminal banking system, you guys, and we're able to now show very clearly that they bamboozled us, and as a product of that bamboozlement, made billions and billions, if not trillions and trillions of dollars, and then use that money to further their agenda of global war, of using this money to topple governments, to using institutions which don't exist, to launder drug money, which was part of the agenda also. It's just the layers of criminality that we're getting ready to discuss, ladies and gentlemen, is staggering. And I'm very appreciative of Greg for joining us today. So I want you guys all to stay here with that. I'm going to digress away from that for just a second and hit on a couple of other major headlines from around the world in terms of economics. According to WND right now, the gold shortage is the worst in over a decade. We have been talking about this for about a week now. But they're saying the last time there was a systemic physical gold shortage was back in July of 2013. And it was then that for the first time in 5 years, the 1 month gold forward offered rate went negative. So right now, although the price of paper gold still seems to drop, the global demand is higher than it has ever been, ever in the history of the world, ladies and gentlemen. People are trying to buy gold hand over fist right now. There's another report coming from Gold Eagle right now, which shows via charts the reverse of the central bank gold policy over the last decade. About a decade ago, they didn't think there was much value in gold, and now all of the private central banks are buying up gold as quickly as they possibly can. So that is what's going on in the gold and silver market. We apparently ran out of time, like I do every day. We're going to go to a quick 3-minute break, you guys. This is your daily dose of deprogramming. Thank you guys for being here on Red Pill Reports radio broadcast for today. Stay with us. We are going to have Greg Morse on it for one of the most potentially important discussions you'll ever hear, ever in your life. Get your friends, get your family. This is going to be big, 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 big. Stay right here. My name is JD. We are live. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Thanks for staying here, guys. My name is JD. Thank you guys for being here. We are live, as we are every day, Monday through Friday. It is 11 o'clock Central Time right now, and we're moving into the second hour of our broadcast. I want to preface this by saying how thankful I am to be given an opportunity by Greg and his investigatory team to work hand in hand as we try and flush out this investigation. Again, probably one of the most multi-layered, multifaceted criminal developments I've ever come across. And Greg's work has just been absolutely second to nothing I've ever seen ever in my life. So Greg, thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks, JD.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. And again, when we say that this is probably going to be a story bigger than the internet itself, we're not kidding when we say that, are we, Greg?
No, we're really not. It's all predicated on how many people we can get to get involved, become actionless with us, and sign on board.
Mm-hmm. And I'm really, as I said, very, very privileged to be part of this team and doing what I can to help spread this message. But Greg, before we get involved with everything that's going on with the mortgage scandal, as it were. Would you do us a favor and just give us a little bit of insight into your background and how you became so involved with this issue?
Yeah, the short version, JD, is that back in the mid 80s, my single partner and I ended up being one of the largest individual private developers of airports in the country. And it was all by just luck. But we ended up building some very large projects, and we had one going up in Frisco, Texas, called the North Dallas Jetport. And during the course of that effort, we were involved with one of the big S&Ls called Franklin Savings and Loan that was located at 712 Congress Avenue down in Austin. And I won't go into the detail, but we caught them lying, saying that they had a $1.2 billion in asset when in fact there were $400 million in the red. And so that led in mid-late 85, that led to us being two of the people that were members of a small group that ended up breaking the entire S&L debacle for the American people. So that led into a 9-year federal lawsuit that we finally won in 93. Almost 9 years, I guess it was 8 actually, 85 to be 8 years. And what ended up happening was when this mortgage crisis broke in 08, I'd never missed payment, never been late. I was running my corporate jet business and whatnot, and I didn't think anything about it. And I don't believe much I don't believe anything in the mainstream press. So I wasn't really paying attention. All of a sudden, my phone started ringing off the wall from people in Washington, down in Austin, other places. And there were people that I dealt with almost 30 years before on the S&L crisis. And they said, "Are you aware of what's going on?" And I said, "Only what I've heard, sparingly in the press." They said, "Would you help?" And I said, "Well, certainly, it's something we need to look at." So one thing led to another. And the end of the subject is, after taking about 6 months, up until early 2009, we did a real serious investigation on my mortgage, which at that time consisted of Homecomings Financial, GMAC, Fannie Mae, and ended up being a lot of others that we were unaware of, according to the county recorder's record. And we found over 1,000, literally, and it's on our website. You can go read the summary of claims. We found over 1,000 individual instances of either criminal fraud or civil statute violation on both the state and federal level in just my one mortgage.
Just your mortgage.
Just that one.
Unbelievable.
And they're on our website, JD. You can go to saveourfamilyathome.com, go to the documents for download, go look at it, and I posted it. There's a 32-page long summary with about, 60 or 70 lines per page, and it lists by paragraph in the complaint, in the amended complaint that's also on the site. It lists by paragraph, by page, which statutes were broken, whether they were state or federal, and which entity broke those statutes.
Wow. And again, the name of your website is saveourfamilyandhome.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I definitely would recommend everybody go there, and we're going to give them another reason to go to that site in just a little while once we start talking about the action items that are related to this issue in terms of the petition that you guys have put up. But I want to talk a little bit about how you made the transition from, once you realized there was so much going on in your own mortgage, what was it that made you say, okay, we need to really ramp this thing up? And, obviously if it's affecting me, it's affecting everyone. What was it that hit you where you said, okay, it's go time. We really have to get involved on a national level?
It was the realization, JD, of all of the criminal acts of cover-up conducted against me in my pro se federal civil RICO, Racketeering, Influence, Corrupt Organizations Act lawsuit by the judges and the lawyers in the court system.
So essentially you got so much blowback just from dealing with your own RICO lawsuit that you decided you had enough, essentially, and said, I'm not going to take this line down.
Yeah, because it was obvious. You'd have to be blind, deaf, and dumb to not realize it. That, as Hill saying goes, even Stevie Wonder could see this. It was the blowback, and I talked to him personally about that. He thinks it's funny. The point of it is this: there were so many acts of lying, submitting of fraudulent documents, ignoring of state and federal statute and federal court, that I said, there's got to be more to this. You know, it's kind of like a constellational anomaly. At that point, you don't know the technical specificity and meaning of every single one of those actions. But if every time you go through the door, you may not see the guy hitting you in the face with the bat, but you know you got hit. So it entices you to go find out who the heck's holding the bat.
Right. And I mean, the effort that you put in has been beyond commendable, we'll just say. But you want to perhaps walk us through some of the main bullet points of what it was that you discovered in terms of this being, you know, the totalitarian nature of this entire endeavor that you're on right now?
Yeah, let me get right. I'm going to leave, as we previously discussed, let me just leave all because of the timing, let me just leave all of the technical complexity out of it. Let's go right to the summary.
Okay.
Here's what we found. The corruption and the effort against me, which has included physical attacks, house break-ins, vehicle destruction, death threats, all of that hocus pocus, which does nothing to bother. I couldn't care less about it. It means nothing to him.
Mm-hmm.
I invite them to come see us. The bottom line is that after all of those things happened, what we found were the following two things. The mortgage crisis for the average American citizen, of which you and I, JD, are two. The biggest two issues was that the mortgage crisis represents, without question, without equivocation, the single largest acts, plural, of federal income tax evasion and securities fraud. Wow. Now, we're talking in the quadrillions, not trillions, quadrillions of dollars. Now, if you want to talk about exactly why that's true and how we can prove it, happy to do it. But here's what those two conclusions led to. That led to me filing on April the 24th of 2014 a composite 500-page private American citizen whistleblower package, subsequently which has been received, accepted, and acknowledged as being legal and in concert with the law, compliant with the law, from both the IRS and the SEC, a whistleblower document. And we've laid out thousands of pages of corroborating evidence. I've written a 279-page jurat affidavit, which is on the website, and it tells you everything that happened that we can prove, starting with the appraiser coming out to appraise your property before you buy it, all the way up to including the money going to the DTCC and going to the Federal Reserve.
My goodness.
At that point, we knew that we could track and fight in court and show exactly what happened from that starting all the way to that ending point. Starting being appraiser, ending being the Federal Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
What we didn't have was the information that we've been able to obtain in concert with me bringing Scott Bennett onto the process here about how the money got from the Federal Reserve, not singularly, but in large measure predominantly, to the Union Bank of Switzerland, UBS, and how those funds have subsequently been used to fund terrorist activities of the very people that we said used to be our greatest enemies, that being Al-Qaeda and military black ops. So that, in 5 minutes or less, is the summary of how we got. That's what we found. That's what we can prove. And that's where it took us.
I mean, that is one heck of an accusation, Greg. And I'm not saying that, that we don't believe you guys, but that's one of the most powerful accusations I've ever heard in my entire life, because you're basically saying that the casino was not only rigged, and everybody who understands fractional reserve lending and the way the Federal Reserve works, we all understand that the casino is rigged, but that they took the profits from that rigging to then engage us into all of these other illicit activities, putting the junta in Ukraine, supporting Al-Qaeda, supporting the quote-unquote moderate rebels in Syria, they use that money then to promote instances that will allow them to accelerate their agenda and allow them to almost complete the cycle again. You know what I mean? It's like a self-fulfilling cyclical prophecy right now. It's just staggering to me.
Well, it is staggering, but let me put it into the proper context, not only for you, which I know you understand, but also for your listeners.
Okay.
Everybody has got to understand this, and I always downshift into first gear because I want you and everybody to hear me. Number one, do we have all the evidence? Of course not. You would ask, well, why? When you have over 15,000 pages, isn't that all of it? No, there's probably billions of pages of documents. Here's
Right.
why. It's because those documents are under the control of parties that are our enemies. They're not going to voluntarily, unless they are forced, either by federal marshal issuing of subpoenas, which they would still fight, or a judge were to order them to give it, and the judges, in my opinion, are dealing in concert with them because it's going against the legal country club. Or third, we do what we're doing, and that is we're asking people to give us the power to take them with us, if they so elect, to walk in on the floor of the joint House of Congress. So that means we can't get that evidence by being nice guys, sending them a politically correct, gentle request and say, would you please give us all the information from your own files, which corroborates that you're a crook. It ain't going to happen.
Right.
That's the first point. The second issue is what we do have on my end of the equation, from the appraiser to the Federal Reserve, we can prove everything we claim. So it's not an issue of supposition or saying it's a salacious accusation, because all we have to do is to have the platform on which to be able to enter onto the public record the evidence. Then it's no longer considered by the debunkers as being salacious because all of our evidence is publicly accessed. Now, when it comes to Scott's information, it's a little different story. Scott was in the bowels of the terrorist funding operations of Booz Allen Hamilton and a number of military agencies. Now, that information is, he's got tons of it. We posted a lot of it, 500-600 pages or so on the website for your perusal. And that in and of itself is condemnatory and salacious as heck. But here's the point. Now, in his case, you're talking about further constraints of Patriot Act, NDAA, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of that stuff is classified, supposedly, but it's classified not because it's really in the interest of national security. It's classified because it precludes it from being disclosed, such that the people who are complicit in doing these things could be easily rooted out.
Exactly.
So that's why we have to get to a congressional hearing, as I have stated in our petitioner's letter, on the website, under the icon on the left side, big blue icon, which is called Petitioner's Letter. And in that letter, I have clearly stated that we demand, and this is not a politically correct, soft-hitting letter.
No.
It specifically tells every receiving House of Congress member on all the IGs that we are demanding that you comply with your oath with total, complete disregard for your own political future, any political blowback, any hidden agenda that you or your organization or agency may have, and that if you don't do it and we are able to get this information out, that you may very well find yourself in the position of being classified as being abating the crime, as being a co-conspirator.
Right.
You're aiding and abetting the cover-up.
Well, and
So,
if you can connect these, some senator guy who didn't vet out what it was that he was supposed to be doing as directly, overseeing some sort of transaction that's supporting terrorism. I mean, it's not a hard line to say, well, those guys are obviously terrorists now. If they're, materially supporting terrorism is technically a terrorism in our country, right? I mean,
you could not be more right. You see, it's what I call a constellational anomaly. You may not know all of the technical specifics about every single fact, but there comes a tipping point, JD, when you're doing a very deeply intellectual, technically complex research project. The preponderance of evidence, as long as that evidence is corroborated and is publicly sourced, it's not the rewriting of somebody's rewrite of an article, the source of which you don't know the data. We're talking about actual documents from the SEC and others. What happens is that the preponderance of that evidence very quickly tells you what direction you're headed to. So when it comes to Scott, He's not saying, nor am I saying, that it was specifically singularly Al-Qaeda or ISIS. What we're saying is that once we have the hearing, these guys are going to be in a no-win situation, because they're either going to support our effort and take the blowback, and they may find that they're going to be charged with being complicitory and therefore guilty of being a co-conspirator. Or the other option is what? Try to ignore us, try to further cover it up. We get the information on the record. Then what do? Uh-oh, now they're caught. So they're kind of in a position of damned if they do, damned if they don't. That's why the petitioner's letter and the petition are so harsh and to the point, because you can't give these guys, as we all know from practical experience over the last 60 years, you can't give them any wiggle room.
Exactly.
So what we are saying, last statement is, what we are saying is that the preponderance of evidence out of 24,000 checking accounts and monetary holding accounts at UBS, those monies in whole or in part were used to fund a number of clandestine efforts. Some are probably black ops, some are terrorist related, directly or indirectly, but we can't specifically say how much money on this day went to what organization until we get the Congress of the United States to grow some and stand up for their oath in our constitutional republic and say, we want that evidence. We're going to tie the connection.
I'm still in shock that you just said that there were 24,000 different bank accounts just at that one bank, HSBC, that you guys can now corroborate with some of these black programs. That is such an astounding statement, because, you know, we're talking about, that's just one bank, right? We're just talking about one bank.
Yeah, it was, let me correct you, it's not HSBC, it was UBS.
Oh, UBS, I apologize.
Now, HSBC, though, is one of them. so if there's 24,000 at UBS, Lord knows how many there are at HSBC, Euroclear, Clearstream, and all of the other stock market related spoke entities that come off the hub, which is the DTCC and the Federal Reserve in this country.
I want to definitely talk about the DTCC for people who don't know about it. But one question I want to ask you, just to clarify, and I know you've mentioned this on other radio shows before, but I think it's important in that all of this information that you guys have compiled was all gotten legally, right? You guys didn't hack computers or bribe people or anything like that. Like, all of this is definitely 1,000% admissible in a court, correct?
Absolutely. Our guiding rule is what's called the FREs, the Federal Rules of Evidence. That was our guiding principle. And if you don't follow that, then a typical lawyer who knows anything is going to attack the credibility of your evidence and claim that you hacked a website, you broke into somebody's office and stole it, et cetera, and so on. Absolutely not. Every piece of evidence we have obtained, you could find, or anyone else can find, if they were a trained, dedicated researcher and you wanted to dedicate the time, the money, the sacrifice, and the effort to find it, everybody could find it.
It's funny because I kind of picture you, Greg, as someplace in between like a forensic accountant and like a kind of like a James Bond kind of guy. I feel like I'm reading part of a Tom Clancy novel right now, if I'm honest.
That's kind of an ugly picture, isn't it?
Well, I mean...
Okay, this turns out that, you know, this is incredible. How in the world can you deal with something like this? I mean, it's disrupting to everybody's, or should be disrupting to everybody's life. They should stop everything and be involved in this, because it's going to come down the road to them eventually anyway. If they don't, I mean, how can we not be involved with this? Now, remember that he's saying how that they're, you know, they're aiding and abetting the terrorists. They're the ones that are doing that. Remember Senator Graham's not his rant on the floor of the Senate, when he was talking about how, boy, we're going to throw the book at those who support terrorism in any way, and they don't get a lawyer and whatever. You know, they turned that NDA against American citizens, calling them the terrorists. But here we see Senator Graham, what he's saying, and realizing that that should be something that applies to these people even more.
The Senate recently passed a bill.
Yeah.
A bill that would authorize the president to send the military literally anywhere in the world to detain civilians, even American citizens, without charge or trial.
And to those American citizens thinking about helping Al Qaeda, please know what will come your way: death, detention, prosecution. And when they say, "I want my lawyer," you tell them, "Shut up. Your time is get a lawyer. You're an enemy combatant, and we're going to talk to you about why you joined Al Qaeda."
The House and Senate will be voting again in the next few days on a final version of the bill and need to hear from you now, because Congress shouldn't tell any American citizen needing a lawyer to
shut up, shut up, shut up.
To take action, go to www.aclu.org/.
Of course, that is, they did pass the bill and have renewed it, and this is real old here, where they were trying to round up people to oppose it, but nothing works like that. Now we see the same thing going on about this deal here, where Morse has put together this petition. We're going to see more about it here in another clip coming up, where he's going after the unconstitutional IRS, ironically enough, because they are letting these other crooks that he's talking about get away from them, who are clearly guilty of tax evasion, but because they simply file a claim, the IRS ostensibly refuses to look into it. See, they go after the Tea Party. They don't let them have their tax exempt status. They do all the things that they're doing against those who they're trying to now classify as actual terrorists, while people like Lindsey Graham look the other way, and the IRS looks the other way, while these crooks have literally robbed, as Isaiah says, the people as a bird's nest, and there was not a peep out of them. And so it's just really hard to get it out on the table to see exactly what this is. Hopefully people will be interested enough to listen. But we're going to listen here in this next clip coming up, how Morse is going after him, kind of like they remember how the government got the gangster, what was his name? How could I forget that name? The most notorious one ever in Chicago there. I keep thinking of Malone. That's not his name. What was his name? I haven't thought of it for so long. It'll come to me. But anyway, they got him for tax evasion. That's how they got him in the prison, see? But that's what they need to do for these. But this petition, which everyone should sign, is on his website, and he'll talk about that in a minute. It's a petition calling for open and public federal joint congressional investigation hearings and testimony regarding the mortgage crisis and funding of terrorist activities with funds generated by the mortgage crisis and funneled to terrorist groups by those private and governmental entities and individuals involved in perpetrating the mortgage crisis. Oh man, take that and chew it for a little while, and you see how what we're up against here. It's even worse in the situation, even though it's more complex. But it is, in its essence, it is worse than what anything we've seen the Voices of the Dust talk about in their awful situation, because it was much more simple and easy to understand. But this is horrible. But let's go ahead now and listen to the last clip here from Red Pill Report.
One of the questions I had, though, since we talked about, I know you made the initial effort. You built this perfect description of what was going on, and you sent it to every single person with a pulse, and every single person who might be in a position to do something about it, and probably a lot of people who weren't in a position to do anything about this. But what has been the response from your initial effort at trying to get these people to do their jobs, Greg, when you sent out all these whistleblower packages?
It's been abysmal, absolutely abysmal. Sent out over 505, and of course the distribution list. Again, the way I try to do things, I've got some strengths, but I got a lot of flaws. So I'm always working on trying to minimize the flaws. But when I say we post something to prove what we say, that's our biblical truth. Right. It is all on the website. So you can go to the website and you can see, go to documents for download, then click on whistleblower package, scroll down and you'll see a document entitled whistleblower package distribution list. And you open that up and it's 12 pages of every single breathing human being, starting with Barack Obama on the top left of the first column. That'll tell you every person that we send a certified package of this information to. And out of all of those, including the G20, etc.,
right,
we've had 4. Now, I'm taking the responses from the IRS and the SEC out because those people have an obligation to respond. So I'm talking about, other than the 2 parties with whom I formally filed my whistleblower package with, and you need to ask me about that if we can squeeze it in, because people hear this term whistleblower. I don't think anybody really understands what it means, and I think it would be of great interest and benefit knowledge-wise to your audience to understand at least a summary couple of statements about that at some point. But out of all that, we've had 4 responses. The Department of
voluntary responses, not people who are obligated to respond to you because of law, but 4 people who said, I gotta respond here.
Exactly. And also it's only 4 that have responded in writing.
Right.
Department of Justice, Department of Defense, Federal Trade Commission. Who's the other one? DOD, DOJ, Federal Trade Commission. I'm having a brain lurking. I forgot the 4th one. There's 4 of them. But isn't it interesting? They're all on the website. You can go see them. Pardon my memory. My memory block here. But when you look at the letters, you can read them yourself. You can see with my handwritten stamp on the date they were received, and they're all highlighted. The important statements are highlighted in yellow, so we made it easy for you. You don't have to read the whole letter. Just look at the yellow. Every one of those agencies claim that the issues that, the GAO is the other one.
Oh, okay.
Dig this, the Government Accountability Office, whose congressional mandate is to be the watchdog for the Congress over the whole rest of the government.
Right.
They all say that this information does not merit their investigation because it's not within their jurisdiction.
Could you imagine something not being under the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice? Like, doesn't that just include the planet Pluto at this point? I mean, that's ridiculous.
But that's why I put it up here, because people are going to say, this guy is Looney Tunes. I don't take drugs, never have, and they're going to say I'm a cocaine addict. No, I'm not. Go to the website and read the documents for yourself.
Yes, we've got them linked on our website as well. If you go to redpillreports.com on the Daily Show, you can find links to both the petition letter and the petition. We're going to have to take a quick 3-minute break. Greg, thank you so much for being here. We will be back in 3 minutes. This is your Daily Dose of Deep Programming. And when we come back, we're going to talk action items, guys, what we can all do about it.
So, you want the news and information without the hate, the hype, the fear? Well, you've come to the right place. You can support Truth Frequency Radio by spreading the word on social networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, or your favorite forums. Want to take Truth Frequency Radio on the road? Listen on your iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, or other mobile devices. Want more than just the free stuff? Sign up for a VIP membership for as little as $4 a month and get super high-quality downloads, member-only content, and instant access to your favorite shows without the wait. It's only through your love and support that we're able to cover the cost of maintaining broadcasting. So now, stay tuned for more Free Speech Radio, right here on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. KTFO Radio, worldwide. American gardeners and fellow patriots, many more. The survivalpatriotsupply.com includes D290-927 or discover more emergency protection
Reduction in racist and bigoted comments. People are even starting to notice the complete lack of bigot.
Hey guys, so we're like.
All right, now we are live. We are exceptionally privileged today to be joined by the one and only Greg Morse as we start to flush out some of the details in what is turning out to be probably the most complicated and yet simple criminal organization that I've ever run across. And again, very thankful for Greg Morse joining us today to go over some of this information with us. I want to encourage everyone to go to his website, which is saveourfamilyandhome.com, and go to the section for downloads, and you can download and read all of these documents that Greg is talking about today. Greg, before we went to the break, we were starting to talk a little bit about the whistleblower package, and you had kind of mentioned that you thought some details of that needed to be flushed out. So I want to open up the floor to you to go ahead and do that, if you would, sir.
Sure. People, it's like any other mantra, JD, that you don't hear a word and then like terrorist. 15 years ago, you never heard the term terrorist, right? Now you can't go anywhere, including your local 7-Eleven, without hearing the word terrorist. So it takes on it takes on a numbing effect. I think the same kind of psychological effect has taken place with the term whistleblower. Let me explain to you. There's two categories of whistleblower. The original Whistleblower Protection Acts, which have, under Obama's, let's just say his reign, under Obama's reign, the Whistleblower Acts have been totally ignored, and he's gone after whistleblowers like crazy, throwing them in jail.
Right.
Now, those Whistleblower Acts were originally passed by Congress for the express purpose of protecting employees of the government who wanted to blow the whistle on things that they, in their private capacities, learned were being done criminally, illegally, or administratively wasteful in their agencies.
Mm-hmm.
You and I don't have those linkages. Yes, was I military? Yes. Did I have an intelligence? Yes. But all of my contracts have long since been dead, and I have no relationship as a private American citizen to any government agency or group.
Okay.
Now, when you are a government employee, as Scott was, he is under a different set of constraints and protocols and risks and concerns regarding, well, if I put out too much information, do they come throw me in Guantanamo or some dead thing under NDA, which obviously has happened. Susan Lindauer is a classic example. So his concern is absolutely legitimate. So a lot of the documents that we have regarding that part of the story, which I'm not going to talk anymore about because I'm not as able to talk directly about that as I am about the stuff that me and my team have come up with. So we'll focus on that.
Okay.
But that information in its totality will be disclosed when we walk in with pallets full of documents on the floor of the Congress. But at that point, you see, they can't do anything to Scott because we're already there.
Right.
But if we tell them all of our evidence on the front end, that gives them a chance to start playing more of their already proven they're willing to do dirty acts and work to keep us from getting it to the floor. So in my case, as a whistleblower, I am a non-government employee. I have no linkages or constraints, so therefore the Whistleblower Protection Acts mean nothing to me. I am dangerous to them because they know I don't rely on those because I don't need it. I'm a private American citizen. I can do whatever I want. Number two, if you go to the website and take 5 or 10 minutes and look at the documents, you see my name, my address, my social security number, my signature. I'm totally out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
I put my address on the website. You know exactly where I live. You can Google search it. You can see where I live. I'm not hiding from anybody. I don't use acronyms, pseudonyms, or nothing else. I am who I am, and it's all out there in the public. That bothers them.
Oh, I'm sure it does. Yeah, I mean, seeing an actual person standing up and putting a knife in your teeth and running right at them, that's the best way to make these people run like cockroaches, man.
Exactly. So what happens is I file my package with the IRS and the SEC. Now let's talk about that a minute. You wanted me or asked me to give a little bit of details about how you go from the appraisers.
Yes.
Federal Reserve. Let me answer that question because I think it's all in context. And I'll try to be very specific. As a whistleblower, what I'm telling the federal government is that my evidence proves criminal behavior that is taking monies that the law says those agencies have the jurisdictional mandated authority and responsibility to stop from happening. And I'm telling the IRS, even though I disagree with everything about the IRS from a constitutional perspective, their job is to be paid the taxes that the current set of laws says they are owed to collect. Now, if somebody is conducting criminal behavior which precludes them from collecting that money, that is termed tax evasion.
Yep.
Now, the entire MERS, Fannie Mae, Residential Mortgage-Backed Securitization Trust, DTCC, Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, operational construct did one thing. It created out of thin air quadrillions of dollars, all of which are taxable, and they hid it under a voluntary SEC law. Wow. Here you go. And we can talk about self-regulating organizations. You see, we can't do all this in 1 hour. We've got to spend time together in multiple shows for the benefit of your audience so they can understand the technical realities of how these pieces fit together.
Yes.
Here's the point. It's the old adage of I lie and you swear to it. The SEC gets laws passed which says that if you, the Residential Mortgage-Backed Security Trust, which is the entity into which all 70 million mortgages that Fannie Mae owns was put into, all you have to do to not pay tax is to make a claim that you are a residential mortgage-backed security-based trust there, and you're a real estate mortgage investment conduit trust.
Wow.
And when you do that, if you have less than 300 owners of the trust, you don't have to pay taxes.
Wow.
Now that's what the law says. Step 2 is that if you are going to make that, and you don't have to get approved for it, JD, all you got to do is file a form.
Yeah, so it's saying they don't even have to corroborate the fact that you just have to make the claim.
You just make the claim. That means you don't pay any taxes.
Wow.
Now, think of it this way. A REMIC trust, real estate mortgage investment conduit trust, which is comprised of millions of residential mortgage-backed securities, which means derivative, which means nothing of value, which means it represents millions of broken chains of title. What happens is the REMIC, the trust, claims a REMIC tax exemption. The REMIC is not a form of an organization. It is a classification of an already existing trust, most of which were established from the laws, the trust laws of the state of New York.
Okay.
They filed a form. It says we don't owe tax because we've got X number of dollars and we have less than 300 owners. So therefore we don't pay any tax. Aha. Here's where the fraud comes in. The law specifically says that every one of the mortgages that are in the trust that has become a real estate mortgage investment conduit, every one of those mortgages has got to meet a certain test for its validity, theoretically, for the benefit of the American people, so the values of those mortgages are not undermined. What's the very first one of those? The chain of title cannot have been broken.
Right. Right.
Number 2, if the chain of title is broken, that mortgage is no longer what's called a qualified mortgage. It becomes what is called a non-qualified mortgage. At that point, the tax exempt status is voided and you owe back taxes, penalties, fees, and taxes going into the future.
Wow.
So that means you've got trusts, REMIC trusts, that have generated quadrillions of dollars They're all illegal. There's thousands of them. Everyone we've looked at couldn't come close. They couldn't even come close to being termed legal because all the mortgages went through Fannie Mae, which means by definition the chains of title were broken. That means that every Remick trust owes income tax to the federal government. The reason the SEC got involved is because they are complicit. And I'm sure they're listening to us. They're not liking this conversation.
Oh, I'm sure they're not.
They in their laws, they're complicit with the IRS because the SEC is not going after the people who are conducting the securities fraud, which is generating income, which is taxable. It's not non-taxable revenue. So now we've got the IRS and the SEC both caught red-handed.
It's staggering the level of overlayered criminality that's going on right now, Greg.
It's breathtaking, and you see, if I was a whistleblower government employee type, I couldn't bring all this out.
Right. How many
That's
mortgages?
why I want to talk about it.
How many mortgages do you think are affected? What percentage of residential mortgages do you think are affected by this?
I think probably it's well over 90%.
Oh my goodness!
By the website disclosures of Fannie Mae, they own, control, or have influence on over 70 million mortgages. Now, if you look at the GAO, the Federal Reserve, and the Census Bureau reports from 2013, it says that collectively they're all a few billion apart, but it's all in the $13 trillion range. That represents the total value of all residential mortgages in the United States. Now, if you look at that and you divide it by 70 million, you quickly see to where that's a pretty high percentage of all that 13 trillion. There could be some old mortgages that didn't get dragged into the MERS problem, but if Fannie Mae has, by the testimony witness of which you can go see on the evidence, we've got all the deposition from their two head guys, they admit they have control over 70 million. Now, but it's not really Fannie Mae, is it? Because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are GSEs. A GSE is a government-sponsored enterprise. That's just a politically correct shuffle step to the left fraud, which is intended to cover up the fact they're part of the government. Well, that came out when Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac both declared bankruptcy,
right?
And the FHFA, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, which is the federal government, took over ownership, control, and conservatorship of both of those. So now your mortgage is owned by the federal government.
And it's crazy because we're not, with almost mathematical certainty, you could now say that if you are out there listening to this radio broadcast and you have a mortgage, that this issue affects you almost mathematically without doubt, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reason people don't know it is because I think they have become mesmerized with all the people since 2008 that have yak, talk, and nobody's ever gone after these guys, and nobody's ever done anything more, basically, from our research, than write articles. They don't ever give the evidence. They never tell the background story so that the poor American citizen is kept in the dark. So how can you expect them to know the truth if you don't give them the evidence and don't have shows like Red Pill, which let you get the technical realities disclosed?
And I would like to have you back on to kind of go over some of the more technical realities with this situation, because again, we could spend hours and hours going over all this, but I want to get into the action item. Man, you guys have put together a beautiful petition and a beautiful petition letter. I read it for the first time just a day or so ago, and to say that petition letter is aggressive would be an understatement, Greg. And I fully commend the language that you guys have pulled together for that. It is something that everybody, we're presenting everyone with an opportunity to make a decision. You either are going to draw a line in the sand and be on the right side of history, or you're not. And the language in the petition really substantiates that. So talk to us a little bit about what the game plan is going forward and why it is so important that people get involved with this petition.
The only way we can win this, because you cannot have, as an individual or a small group of individuals, you can have no effect on things like Benghazi, NDAA, Patriot Act, Posse Comitatus, Fast and Furious,
Right.
Fukushima. My Lord, we can cover millions of it. You can be concerned, and you can be an activist, and you can try to get smart about it.
Right.
Here's the analogy, and this is blunt and harsh, but it's the God's honest truth. Take an individual who never reads and studies, can hardly read, can hardly write, doesn't care about anything, and he dies. He's dead. Take the next person who studies constantly and takes an activist stance on a lot of issues, gets multiple PhDs, extremely intellectual, but he never does anything. He dies. What's the end conclusion?
There's no difference.
There's no difference. They're both dead. One guy died a dummy, and one guy died a well-informed person.
Probably a
Neither
worried, well-informed person too, probably.
Yes, but nothing ever happened.
Right.
So what we have to do is put activism aside and embrace actionalism. Not even a word. I made it up. Actionalism. It says we have been activists, which is hugely important because you got to know what you're talking about. But
Right.
once you know what you're talking about and you have the evidence to prove it, then you got to look at it and say, what effect does it have on me, my family, my heirs, my loved ones, and my country? Okay, if the conclusion is this is really bad stuff, and this is as I've stated very clearly in the whistleblower document, you can read you can download, save, keep it for yourself, and read every page. There's 179 pages that I wrote every word of. What it says is this: to the IRS and the SEC and all 505 people that received that document. Every person got the documents that you're seeing on the website. So when you say how many people have responded, and I tell you 4, that should make that answer even more breathtaking because we've given them not only what happened, but the evidence. And they still have, the senators in this nation haven't even responded.
Yeah, it's
not
disgusting.
a one of them.
It's disgusting.
It's repugnant.
Yes.
It'll make you throw up.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens? What happens is that we have got to come together and become actionalists. We have to take action. We know that if we onesie-twosie go through the federal court system, although my case is still standing when most of them are dead, and I've got one more step to go before I go to the Supreme Court, and they can't stop me from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're using the legal system as a pro se plaintiff to our best ability, but I'm still only one guy.
Right.
And this is not about me. This is not about me fighting a lawsuit and getting a big settlement like Birkenfeld did on the UBS banking deal and going off and drinking little drinks with umbrellas in it. That's not what this is about.
Right.
This is about using this case and what we've learned, not only in the case directly, but all the rest of the commingled evidence for the benefit of the American people to say, look, people, this is how they're killing us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to die stupid. I don't want to die smart. I don't want to die. I want to save our constitutional republic. Well, it's all basically gone, so that means we have to reconstitute it.
Right.
We have to reinstitute it. How do we do that? We get every American citizen within our listening voice and all the people that those people know. You know, Bob knows Ted, knows Carol, knows Al.
Yep.
We've got to build an army of constitutional, law-abiding, peace-loving actionalists. You don't want the other kind of revolution. It will cause this country to totally implode.
Yes.
We have to beat these you-know-whats at their own game using the laws of our nation. Now, if you look at the USC, the United States Code in general, what you're going to find is something breathtaking. And most people don't ever have any reason or they don't have the inclination to study it. But I think this is really true. You're going to find that for the most part, the United States Code is a pretty dadgum good system.
Heck yes, it is. It's the fact that they've obfuscated language to the point where we don't even know how to understand the code now. But yeah, the legal system really technically is pretty simple, and it really works effectively if you do it right.
And JD, there are wonderful checks and balances, but here's where the system falls down. The first one you've already identified very insightfully. They use obfuscated language to keep you from understanding it, number one. And then number two, when you have almost every member of Congress being a member of the country club bar license number holding community,
Yes.
they get corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And then they abuse the law, as I have clearly defined today, just in the IRS and the SEC. What two agencies are bigger than those two, individually and collectively, that affects the daily life of every single breathing American citizen? Tell me who they are.
Unless you wanted to classify the mainstream media as the fourth branch of government, I don't think there is a bigger one.
Well, first off, they don't have any legal authority or constitutional jurisdiction over anybody. Second, they're totally corrupted. And thirdly, they lie to you. So to me, there is no fourth estate anymore. And the mainstream media is not even an organization. It's the marketing arm of people like Murdoch.
Yes.
So I don't even put them in the same category. Everybody is scared to death of the IRS. And everybody who has any kind of money typically plays in the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you own a home, you're in the stock market corrupt system whether you like it or not.
Wow.
Because your home mortgage has been securitized and is traded as a figment of your imagination derivative. That is the definition of a derivative.
Mm-hmm.
It is a figment of your imagination. It only exists on paper. It has no financial backing. It has no geographic or financial demographics associated with it, other than the values that are as a gamble placed on it by the people who write the paper. It's a figment of your imagination. So if you own a home, whether you have a penny invested in stocks, you're in the stock market because that's where your house is.
Yeah, well, at least your home is. I mean, even if you're not, your home is.
So the point is the IRS and the SEC are the two biggest agencies under this huge monopolistic governmental system that's been politically developed. Those are the two biggest agencies that affect everybody in this country more predominantly than any other individual or collection of agencies. Because most people don't deal with Commerce or the DOD or the GAO, but they do deal with the SEC and the IRS on a regular basis, whether they know it or not.
Wow. Well,
that's why this is the biggest fraud in history.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it trumps Watergate a million times over. It trumps Iran-Contra a million times over, because those were very geographically specific events that were perceived by the American public to only affect a certain group of people. What I'm disclosing affects everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the action? Go to the website, read the petitioner's letter, which I drafted, read the petition, which I drafted. Had input on it a little bit, but for the folks' part, I drafted it. So if it's good or bad, I get the beanos or the criticism. That's fine. I don't care. The point of it is, it's a demand letter holding the members of Congress and the inspectors general to their oath, because they work for us. Mm-hmm. Why are we in the situation that we're in, JD? It's not because they're corrupt. It's not because they're criminal. There's been criminals since 5,000 years ago.
Yep.
They're doing what they're doing because we as the American people are letting them get away with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is absolutely correct. We have given them consent to do these things, and then give them carte blanche to do whatever they want. And nobody ever wants to hold anybody accountable. I don't even know if there are people, you know, we say we want the Justice Department to hold these people accountable, but I just wonder if there are if there's anybody left in the world that could actually hold these people accountable, Greg, you know?
I can make a case for both, and I don't know, because my crystal ball has been broken for 63 years and it's still in the shop.
Right.
But here's what I will tell you. No individual or collective group of politicians is more important or more powerful than is a collection of the American citizens for whom our founding fathers developed the government that we're supposed to have.
Mm-hmm.
So if the American people stand up, we can throw them all out of office. We can reinstitute the constitutional republic. Is there going to be pain involved? Of course there is. But you can be a coward and run away and hope that the angry tiger is not going to find you when you have no place to hide.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a coward and do that. But if we all come together incrementally, we have the ability to be the most powerful, peaceful, effective, results-oriented army that has ever been known in recorded history.
I completely agree with that, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to be part of that potential groundswell. And I'm really glad that you brought up the idea of cowardice, because it is issues like this that are so frightening, and it is because you're presented with an opportunity to make a choice. You have to choose to go forth and live in truth, or to decide whether, to continue to live in a lie. And for most people, it's easier to continue to live in a lie than it is to say, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to do something about this. And I again, Greg, I just want to commend you for doing exactly that, for standing up. Will you give your website one more time for us today?
Sure. It is saveourfamilyandhome.com.
Okay, so there you have it, saveourfamilyandhome.com. You can go there and sign the petition. But of course, our point here is that we have the voices from the dust warning us about this coming for 180 years now, and the world is starting to see that it not only warns us about it, but also gives us a history and a look into how they solved their problems, although, eventually they were destroyed as well. But the actions they took in the face of these kinds of secret combinations and whatnot that are going on among us. They, remember, the Lamanites destroyed the evil that was among them because of the Gadianton robbers, but they didn't do it with their guns. They did it by preaching the gospel to them. And it says they went, remember, we just heard that read to us here just a few days ago, where they went and preached the gospel to the more wicked part of them, and those people repented. Their preaching was so strong. So if we are filled with the spirit of freedom and with the Spirit of God, and are willing to stand up, although, it's very difficult to see that happening when the whole population is being every day drugged by the fluoride in the water, and by the vaccinations, and by the GMO, and even by the spraying of the skies, and all the different things that we see going on. The global elite are trying to keep us not only dumbed down and inept, but also sick and so concerned with our own health, and also because of the water, that we don't really get riled up about anything. It's the same way they did the prisoners in the Nazi concentration camps. They gave them fluoridated water, which is fluoridated not with natural fluoride, the calcium fluoride, but rather with the fluoroacetic acid, which calmed them down. I can't think of the word that I want to use there, but it pacified them. That was the word. And I also thought about how this Al Capone was the name I was trying to think of, where the great mobster that the government went after him with not Alger Hiss, but Hess, whatever his first name was. And they had that show that was called many years ago, that was about that. It was called the Trouble something, can't remember exactly that either. But Al Capone was the individual that they went after, the government, the FBI guys, that back before they were totally corrupted, went after Al Capone for his taxes and put him in jail that way for tax evasion. And it's so ironic that now this is what Greg Morse is trying to do, to get the unconstitutional IRS to put these crooks in jail, but it's not going to happen. because the same crooks that are doing this are the same crooks that established the IRS. So it is an awful situation that we are in. There is no doubt about it. But I put on it, if you can look at the showcase here, I think it's, well, that's for those. If you go to Google Plus and you watch this show on the Google Plus page, you will see a showcase, and it has the links to these two websites, the website of Greg Morse, where the petition is that you can sign, and also the website of Scott Bennett, not the website of Scott Bennett, but a YouTube video of a 3-hour interview with him where he gives the details of how they've taken all this money and they have used it to do what the voices of the dust have told us that they would be doing, and that is to overthrow the governments of the world, to overthrow the freedom of all lands, nations, and countries, and to bring to pass the destruction of all people. And that's what they're doing. But anyway, so hopefully all that will make a difference for all those who watch this show. And in the meantime, I hope you have a good day. We'll see you tomorrow. And my prayer, as always, is that the Lord's choicest blessings will be with us all in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.